BC Ferries again had major problems today as the first two sailings on the busiest route were canceled because two crew members called in sick. CTV's Ben Milger spoke with frustrated passengers who say this happens so often. They've come to expect BC Ferries to let them down.
A familiar sight at the terminal, passengers gauging the number of cars in front of them, wondering if they'll make the next ferry.
I need an answer. We have friends waiting for us over there that are 91 years old, waiting for a ride. So let's hope we make it.
BC Ferries canceled the first two sailings for the Coastal Inspiration because it was short two crew members. Despite other vessels being out for servicing, workers from those ships could not fill in. That caused fears about a possible 7-sailing wait, but the backlog was cleared by early afternoon.
Some of those crews aren't necessarily trained and familiar on the coastal class vessels. So unfortunately, we couldn't utilize the Spirit of Vancouver Island crew to replace the absent crew members.
Speaking to passengers here at the terminal, we are hearing less anger and frustration than we have in the past during similar cancellations, but more resignation. Some people telling us this is simply the level of service they have come to expect from BC Ferries.
We're constantly worried about BC Ferries cancellations. I was not surprised when I heard it on the radio.
Obviously, we'd like the service to be better. We'd like there to be more boats, more sailings, but just take what we can get at the moment, I guess.
The ferry union says its staff do still have to deal with angry passengers, and it has led to incidents of abuse.
There's been people spitting, yelling, lots of verbal interactions, and people swerving vehicles at our members of the union. In
terms of solutions, the union says training upgrades for existing workers could alleviate the staffing crunch.
Getting those people through to licensed positions is the solution for the future.
In the meantime, just one or two people calling in sick can throw BC Ferries off course. Ben Milger, CTV News, Tsawwassen.
The latest fiasco at BC Ferries led to rough waters at the legislature for the government. It comes days after the NDP announced it would make the company accountable by issuing fines for late sailings. CTV's Rob Buffum has that story.
You're going to take responsibility for the results that the public is seeing at BC Ferries.
There were turbulent waters at the legislature today where this morning's long lines were front and center.
What do we see today? Continued missed sailings, continued canceled sailings, and worse results for British Columbians.
Today's ferry fiasco triggered by a staffing shortage on the ships 2 days after 4 new vice presidents started their jobs.
You know, they can somehow manage to find 4 more executives, vice presidents, earning between $300,000 and $460,000 a year, but apparently they can't find people to just operate the ships.
BC Ferries acknowledges it needs to hire more staff for its vessels, but is adamant the new executive team isn't taking away from the boots it needs on the ground.
Size of our executive team has not increased. While we have promoted some different new VPs, their positions are not being backfilled.
Today's canceled sailings days after the government announced they would bring in fines when BC Ferries cancel sailings due to staff shortages.
I think that was a move for the government to appear to be doing something. It's not going to improve the situation.
The fines won't kick in until April and are tied to $500 million in funding the province is giving BC Ferries, money being used to reduce fare increases for the next 4 years.
This is why we are trying to raise the accountability in the company.
The fines are pegged at $7,000 for a canceled major route and $1,000 for a smaller one.
You don't fine the corporation. That's them giving them money and saying give some of it back in these weak little puny fines that are meaningless to the corporation but would be meaningful to the executive team.
I don't think the company should save money like they did this morning on fuel and be able to essentially add that to their retained earnings at the end of the year.
Meanwhile, it's the passengers who have grown weary of a seemingly endless year of canceled and late sailings.
And we want to get to the mainland, and we only have one way to get there.
And Rob Buffum joins us live from Victoria. Rob, so part of today's backlog flowed from reservations. So what is the fate of that system?
That's right, it's become increasingly popular and it can cause confusion. This morning, if you looked online at about 8 o'clock after some of those cancellations, it appeared as though you couldn't get on a ferry until 9 o'clock because people were bumped down the line and there were so many reservations. BC Ferries tells us it's currently about 75 to 80% of its ships accommodate reservations. They say they won't go to full reservations, but it's not out of the question that it will increase to about 85% of ships being set aside for reservations, a cost on average of an additional $18. Mi-jung.
All right, thank you, Rob.